Okay, I'm ready when you're ready.
Well, they cause audience engagement to fail. They cause that critical emotional connection to fail. They cause your story, your brand, your pitch to fail. What does? What gets in the way of audience connection, emotional engagement, and critically, your story succeeding? The 6 mistakes that we make online.
So good. John, it's super great to have you on the program. My name's Jay Wilson. I'm a freelance consultant through my company, Onyx Reporting. I actually can't wait to see all of the things that I'm doing wrong. So, John, I'm super stoked about that. But what we're trying to do today is help people who are giving technical presentations be more successful at what they do. So, yeah, I guess, John, who are you? It's obvious what you do, but please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Jay. My name is John Bennett. My company is Talking Trade Communications. We're a communication training and coaching business. And our role, very, very simply, is to grow the confidence and the ability of people to perform their messages.
I love that language of perform because I think a lot of times, especially kind of from where I'm coming from, we don't think about giving presentations as performance. It's like that thing that I have to do that's part of my statement of work, that's part of my task. I guess dig a little bit more for me. What do you mean by perform?
Well, for us, Jay, communication is a performance. And really this is the first mistake that so many of us make online, thinking that it's a presentation or a meeting, thinking I'm going to a meeting, thinking I'm just going to present some data, some analysis, some information. No, you're not. It's not a meeting and it's not a presentation. It's a performance. Communication is a performance with the one, with the few, with the many, face to face, of course, on the telephone, absolutely, and in this online world that we now inhabit, whether that online world is live or whether you're recording a video for future use. They are all performances, Jay.
I 100% agree. And guys, I think it's really important that you think of that and approach going into Zoom that way, because let's be honest, everybody's in back-to-back Zoom meetings, and I don't know, you get what would you say, John? 20 seconds, a minute to kidnap and capture people's attention. Otherwise, they're like alt-tabbed or they're scrolling through their phones, right? And for the conference, we've got people in 20-minute and 35 and 45-minute slots. If we lose people in the first minute, they won't come back for your presentation, and you might lose people for the next
No,
presentation.
you're absolutely right, Jay. We are simply, a click away, are we not, from anonymity. If you're doing a live performance, if you're doing a live presentation at a breakout session for a major conference, you've got 200 people in the room, the chances are very high that if you really haven't got into the message after a minute or two, that the audience is still going to be sitting down. They're not going to stand up and walk out, because that would be a rude thing to do. And most of us are socialized to the extent where we would not do that to somebody. But online, 15 seconds, if you don't capture their imagination, if you don't cause them to want to listen, if you don't give them a flavor or a sense of what's coming, and if you don't do that, then the chances are very high they won't want the experience, and you are merely talking into the ether, your message never to be recalled.
And guys, it was such a small thing, but now that you've heard John say it, I hope you go back to the beginning of this recording and watch it again. John didn't lead with, "Hi, my name's John," because in the first 20 seconds, nobody cares what your name is. They care about, what am I getting out of this presentation? What's your hook for pulling me in? And once I'm sucked in and like engaged, then you can tell me your name, because I might care. And I think that was a super like clever but small thing you did. Another thing that I really like about John's presentation is he's got this beautiful backdrop. I don't know if this is in your house or not, or if this is a studio set, but I like it's a little bit of a wider shot so I can see more of John's like physicality, his hand motions and all of this. Now, for those of you who are presenting, especially if you're the ones who are going to be typing on a screen, like kind of like what I'm doing right now. I'm in a position where I can type on my computer. I can occasionally make eye contact with the screen and all of this, but I do make consideration for how big my body is in the frame, because I want to make sure that if I'm just a small corner in the bottom right, that you can actually see my eyes, and maybe my hand gestures aren't as important. Keep in mind your composition. I'm not saying one is right or wrong, but think about whether you're a keynote speaker or somebody who's going to be doing a screen share. Please, John, go on.
Let's go back then to that first mistake, thinking it's a presentation or a meeting. It isn't, it's a performance. And there are three essential elements to it being a performance. The first one is that words alone do not communicate. Words alone do not communicate. You have to put emotion and conviction and energy and commitment behind the words. Facts alone are really difficult to remember. We're not wired to remember facts. We're wired to remember story. We're wired to remember experiences. Mm-hmm. We're not wired to remember fact after fact after fact after fact after fact. You have to weave story and put emotion behind the facts and help the facts come alive. And that takes me to the third key element of communication being a performance, and that is emotion is the key to impact. Emotion is the key to impact. Now, why? Why is emotion the key to impact? It's because when we experience something, we experience it initially through our emotional filter, what we call the emotional brain. In other words, we have an emotional reaction to a stimulus before we have a considered, rational, thought through, logic brain reaction to a stimulus. So when we see something, we have an emotional reaction to it. Do I like the look of that? As soon as somebody starts to speak, do I like the sound of that? Mm-hmm. Does this person sound as if they care? Does this person sound as if this matters to them? Or does it sound as if they are merely going through the routine of delivering fact after fact after fact after fact? Because if that's what happens, the emotional brain can very, very quickly decide, no, this is not for me. I'm clicking out. I'm going away. I'm going to do something different. And long before your thinking brain has started to process the information, analyze the information, and determine the value or validity of the information, the emotional brain has decided no. And maybe the emotional brain has directed the hand to click off the link.
Guys, I want to just really quickly, John, can you do something for me? Can you come up to the side of the mic and talk at me?
Yes, Joe. Would you mean like this? Here?
That is exactly what I mean. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So guys, you don't have to buy a good mic, but I do recommend that you have a good mic. This is in addition to like all of the stuff that John was saying, but just from the technical perspective, people will watch poor video quality. They will not listen to poor audio quality. And if your mic isn't doing what it should do, they're not going to listen to you, no matter how good the quality of your information is. It's just like begging for them to alt tab. Another thing that I really liked is John's point about like emotion being that first thing that pulls you in. I encourage those of you giving presentations to think, hey, on this topic that you're talking about, what was your user's previous experience? What is their perception of Domo? Where are they coming from? Are they coming from a happy place of feeling supported? Are they coming from a place of feeling frustrated? Be aware of their experiences and use that to kind of shape how you choose to engage with them.
That's a really interesting point. We use a very simple three-letter acronym to describe what you've just talked about. And that three-letter acronym is AMY, A-M-Y, AMY. Oh. And AMY simply stands for audience, message, and you, the performer. So when you're putting a performance together, when you're putting content together, when you're crafting a story, it's all about and only ever about the audience.
Hmm.
It's not about you. It's not about your company. It's about the audience. What are their issues? What are their challenges? What are their frustrations? What's getting in the way of them achieving their objectives? What's getting in the way of them driving their business forward, being able to transform their business because of whatever is going on? And once you understand the audience and understand their issues, their frustrations, their concerns, then you can start to craft the message, the story, to fit and therefore resonate with that audience. And the why in Amy is you, the performer. What is it you need to do to yourself? What is it you need to do by way of research? What is it you need to be able to do to be able to craft that message for that audience?
Amy.
So thinking it's a presentation or a meeting, it isn't. It's a performance. The second mistake that we all so easily make, and I see this all the time, is thinking it's all about PowerPoint, thinking I've got to get the PowerPoint right, thinking I've got to support what I say with a series of slides. You don't have to. And I want you to think three things when you're putting a set of slides together. Number one big idea per slide, no more than 6 words. I see far too often slides that are full of words, slides that would look very, very attractive in a report, but have absolutely no place in a presentation where you're trying to influence, where you're trying to persuade, where you're trying to perhaps inspire or excite the audience. In a situation like that, no more than 6 words on a slide. And here's a really, really simple rule for a great slide. The audience should get it in 3 seconds. 1 and 2 and 3, got it.
Again, with the conference, we've got 2-ish major kind of categories of presentations. We have people who are doing kind of keynote and round table and Q&A sessions. And then we have other people who are doing technical presentations where they're going to actually be walking people through code. Now, obviously.
Perfect. Jay, that's my third point, and you preempted it. And thank you for that. When is a busy slide entirely appropriate?
Okay.
A busy slide is entirely appropriate when the objective of the session is to educate. A busy slide is entirely appropriate if I want to give you the impression of the sheer complexity of a process. If I want simply to show you how complex something is, showing it in its entirety and in all its complex glory, perfect. But all too often, Jay, what I see are these complex slides that people hardly make reference to or make passing reference to. I'm looking at the slide, trying to make sense of it, not really listening to what's being said. Now there's a disconnect. You're talking at this level, Jay. I'm hearing down here and not really hearing at all because I'm really reading more than I'm hearing. If that disconnect carries on for any length of time, the emotional brain may just conclude, this is too much of a struggle. I'm not enjoying this experience. Click.
Yeah. For those of you who are presenting at the keynote level or even at the round table, I think, something to keep in mind is like, if you've got a ton of stats that you think are interesting, rattle off the stats. But John already said, people aren't going to memorize statistics. They will be impressed with the platform is faster. It's less convoluted. We've made it easier. Those are the things that I think you can, like John was saying, 6 words, right? That'll get the job done. Be careful of too many stats because people read the stats instead of paying attention to you.
Lovely, Jay. Thank you. Thinking it's a presentation or a meeting, it isn't. It's a performance. Thinking it's all about PowerPoint, it isn't. PowerPoint is a tool. Use it appropriately, but remember it's you that influences. The third mistake that so many of us make is thinking that the audience will get what really matters. They'll be able to work it out. An audience will not work out what really matters unless you tell them. Tell them up. Tell them why they should listen. Share with them the value they're going to get by listening to you. And here's a really, really simple but very powerful structure to enable you to do that. Here's the structure for me of the ideal presentation. Open with what we call a headline statement. I heard Jay a little bit earlier. He used the expression hook. Open with an overarching headline statement, the essence of your message. Now, where does that come from? Well, if you take your entire content and you were to distill it down into a handful of words, ask yourself simply, what do those words say? There is your headline statement. If you can make it controversial, make it so. The idea of the headline is to grab the audience's attention and cause them to think, hang on a minute, this sounds interesting. Follow your headline statement with your 3 key messages. What is the essence of your presentation? What is it you want them to remember? What are the actions you want them to do? At the end of this presentation, you will understand how Domo can support your business in the critical areas for you of A, B, and C. What drives what those 3 key messages, of course, should be, what influences the headline statement, Amy, audience, message, and you, the performer. Who is the audience? What are their issues? Follow your 3 key messages, then with a brief introduction of who you are. And if you feel it necessary or you feel it will be helpful for the audience, a credibility statement. My role is, this is what I do. And then follow that with your story.
Yeah.
What is the story you want to tell? And in typical story style, what is the problem? How are businesses being affected by what is happening right now? What is the impact of that problem? How is it affecting their ability to compete? How is it affecting their ability to deal with the disruptors in their marketplace?
Yeah.
What do you believe they could do about it? What can you offer them by way of a solution? And start to take that problem away. And critically, and finally, the 4th fundamental element of story, how will their business look moving forward? What will their ideal future state look like? What is the value to them of implementing your solution?
Yeah, to jump in on that one. So Matt, your son, obviously one of my favorite AEs at Domo, I have to say it. It's actually true. He is one of my favorite, but I remember I was working on a project for him, and I worked super late into the night working on this data science kind of implementation for this POC. I ran into Matt in the hall on the way into the office, and I just like started spouting out, oh my gosh, I learned about lemmatization, and I did this data flow, and all the things. And he just looks at me and he's like, Jay, will it work faster, and why should I care? Like, what are you trying to tell me? And I was so upset. I was like, I just spent 5 minutes telling you all the cool things my data flow does. And he's like, but Jay, what does that mean for me?
Yes, what is it? Yeah.
And I love that, John, you're saying, let the audience know at the beginning what they're going to get out of it at the end. Tell them why they should care. Why is what we're presenting important? Again, as part of that hook to make sure that they don't alt tab and leave.
Absolutely. Let's go back to that comment I made earlier. Emotion is the key to impact. When you're telling a story that features problems and challenges, frustrations, in other words, what is happening in the business right now and how is the business being threatened? And then you start talking about the solution, the way forward, the future ideal state, how your business will look in the future. What you're doing is you're taking your audience on an emotional journey. So it's not just a story that is relevant to them, but it connects with them emotionally, as stories invariably do. Because when you're talking about a problem and the impact of a problem, you're in a different emotional state than when you're talking about the solution and the value to the business of that solution. So you're now taking your audience on almost a roller coaster of a journey. Problem, impact, solution, value.
So John, I'm super impressed with like every time you pick back up after I say something, you restate where you were at, or you draw us back to a previous thought that you shared with us. And I think it's super powerful that you're using kind of this repetition to help us learn and remember, which I think is very admirable is the wrong word, impressive, because I would just have the words behind me like, here are the 5 things I'm going to talk about, and then I could look at it and point, yes, we were talking about XYZ. So I'm wondering, do you have a teleprompter? Is it written on a whiteboard behind you? How did you prepare so like that you just have this so stone cold?
I have some key words under each of the 6 mistakes that people make. I just have a few key words that trigger the flow.
Mm-hmm.
And really what this brings me to shortly, of course, is the 6th mistake we make, which is people don't think I need to rehearse. You do. The more rehearsed you are,
right,
the more the flow appears natural, the more you appear to be absolutely understanding what you're talking about. Rehearsal is key.
Yeah. I've had people tell me like, Jay, you seem so natural in front of a camera. It seems so unrehearsed. And I'm like, no, you just saw the 30-second take of this thing. I've been doing this for 3.5 days trying to get this 20-minute thing right. I appreciate I'm asking people to contribute their time to participate in this conference. So 1, thank you very much. But 2, some rehearsal is good. Some rehearsal is good.
You made a really interesting point, Jay, a few moments ago about repetition, and you acknowledged what I was doing there. You know, why am I doing it? One of the fundamental principles of human memory is that we remember what we repeatedly hear. There are 4 principles to human memory. We remember anything that is outstandingly different. We remember what we repeatedly hear. We remember the first things that happen to us. It's called the principle of primacy.
Mm-hmm.
And we remember the last things that have happened to us, the last experiences that we had. And that's called the principle of recency.
Yeah.
So primacy, recency, repetition, and outstandingly different. They're the 4 principles of human memory. Why do I start with a headline statement and the 3 key messages? Because that's the first thing you hear. Why do we keep repeating? Because that facilitates memory recall. Why at the end, when I finish, will I go through the whole thing in summary? Because that will be the most recent thing that you've heard.
I would encourage everyone to produce, if not a PowerPoint slide, a bulleted thing of their talk, and practice going through the bulleted thing of their talk, because you'll find the stuff that is important and the stuff that is extra. When I'm like trying to record my YouTube videos, I find that I waffle a lot. I repeat myself a lot as I'm trying to get to the essence of what I'm trying to communicate to you. So definitely do construct the bulleted list. Just don't put it on the screen behind us. Like, you don't want me reading while you're talking. Like that's never good.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. Thinking it's a presentation or a meeting, it isn't. Thinking it's all about PowerPoint, it isn't. Thinking the audience will really get what matters, they won't unless you tell them. The 4th mistake that we make is thinking that vocal and physical presence is for actors. You know, I'm not an actor.
You're not? Wait, really? Are you really not?
I'm not. No, I'm not an actor. I'm a business communicator.
You have such good theatricality. I love it.
I do understand that vocal presence, the way the words come out, what you do with this machine is key to the audience engagement and that emotional connection. It's key to impact. It isn't enough just to deliver the words. You have to put emotion behind the word. It's what we call, what is the message behind the message? So if I do this, good morning, everybody, and welcome. My name is John Bennett. I'm really excited to be here today. In fact, ever since Jay asked me to share with him my thoughts about the mistakes that we make online, I've been really excited and looking forward to working with him on his YouTube channel.
How excited were you really, John?
Exactly. I mean, you heard everything I said. The words were clear enough. They were reasonably well articulated, and emotionally, you're already walking away from the message. It isn't enough to use the word. You have to be the word. You have to be excited. You have to be concerned. You have to be frustrated. You have to be the emotion that you're talking about for that critical connection to take place. Remember, the message travels first through the irrational, emotional brain before it gets into the immensely capable thinking brain for processing, for analyzing, for decision making, for discussion. Here's a powerful word to help you think about vocal presence. And the word is laser, L-A-S-E-R, laser, L-A-S-E-R. What does the L stand for? Well, the L stands for loudness. You obviously have to be heard, obviously. Now, that doesn't mean you have to shout. Even if I whisper, I still need to be heard. It just means you have to be heard. And varying that loudness makes us more interesting than loudness at the same level all the way through. The A in laser stands for articulation. It's one thing being heard, it's another being understood. Articulation, increasingly important, given that English is the business language of the world, which means, of course, that for many people, they are listening to a language which is not their natural language, not their first language, and not necessarily a language that they are completely familiar with in terms of vocabulary. So when you're articulating the message within reason, the simpler, the better, within reason.
Just to interrupt for a second,
Yes.
on loudness and articulation. In a lot of the interviews that I've done, and if you look on my YouTube channel, guys, I've done 7 or 8 interviews with a couple different people, many of them who will be in the conference. But you'll notice that sometimes people kind of trail off as they get to the end of their sentence, or as they're kind of thinking about their next sentence. And it's super tough when I'm editing the video, but I'm sure it's also tough on the audience, especially if English is their second language, like John was saying. And we will have folks in EMEA, we will have people from Germany, from Italy, and other places. So yes, pace yourself, maintain the steam all the way through.
Jay, you make a really interesting point. There's something else about losing emphasis towards the end of the sentence. And that is that at an emotional level, we determine that what you have just said really isn't that important. So if I was to say to you now, Jay, it's absolutely critical that we get this right. Absolutely critical that we take action now. At an emotional level, you're thinking, well, it doesn't sound that critical. I mean, I know he said it was critical, but it doesn't sound that critical. It didn't feel that critical. It's absolutely critical we get this right. You have to finish with emphasis, you have to finish with authority, and you have to finish with conviction. Because if you don't do that, then the audience is beginning now to walk away from the message, and you, ironically, are achieving for them the exact opposite of what you intended.
And guys, not to get us too far away from laser, But I'm thinking back to when you came and trained us in September. I was having a follow-up conversation with a fellow TC, and we were like, God, it just feels like, it does feel like we're acting to put so much emphasis on the syllabus, to put so much energy into what we're saying. But I do think it's important to keep in mind, guys, for many of us, we are truly a small box in the bottom right corner of the screen. They can't see our body. And so the articulation, the power, the energy we bring into this presentation, even if it feels over the top, is going to be something that your audience is going to be looking for and wanting to hear. You just don't want to sound boring, I guess. That's the
Absolutely
short
right.
version.
Absolutely right. And Jay, you couldn't sound boring if you tried hard, because you do understand about emphasis, you do understand about energy, you do understand about commitment to the message. So laser, L for loudness, A for articulation, S for silence. Silence is the most powerful weapon in your vocal armory. The drama, the significance, the humor, the irony never lies in the words that you say, only ever in the silence that follows those words. If you're a fast-paced speaker, if you have a fast mind, if you're a person in a hurry, if you're giving the impression that you need to get this conversation over with as quickly as possible because you've got other things to do and you're a very busy person, you will lose your audience, and they will lose the impact of what you're saying. Silence is powerful.
This is magic, guys. Sorry, I probably stepped on your silence. This is magic, and it's super important, guys. If you, especially if you are feeling like, oh, I didn't pace my presentation well, I'm getting to the end, and then others say, oh, okay, let me just wrap up some of these slides, and you start flying through the slides super fast. Don't do it. Either skip the slide or change your message or curtail your message, shorten your message, but don't read quickly through slides, because nobody's paying attention at that point. Now they're just looking at their clock and they're like, oh yeah, I do have a meeting in 3 minutes that I need to be thinking about. You've lost us. So you just don't shoot yourself in the foot.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
The E in laser stands for emphasis. You need to know which part of the sentence to emphasize. Which is the most important part of the sentence? What is the point that you really want the audience to remember? Which part of what you're about to say matters more than any other, and you want that to resonate with the audience? That is where you emphasize. L-A-S-E-R. R stands for rate, the rate of delivery. In other words, speed, how quickly you talk. Now, there is no issue with speed. There is no issue with speed. But what makes speed compelling, what makes speed interesting, what makes speed potentially exciting is when at times you take it away and you speak slowly and you speak precisely to make a point, and follow that with silence. And then bring the energy back. So it's varying it all the time. That's the key, varying it all the time. Laser. So thinking it's about a presentation or a meeting, thinking it's about PowerPoint, thinking the audience will get what really matters, thinking vocal presence and physical presence are for actors, they are not. Thinking it really doesn't matter where I sit, what's behind me, what is around me, because it's only a meeting when all's said and done. It does matter. Where you can, use a microphone. And where you can, have an independent camera that you can is at eye contact level, and you can share your thoughts with and through. Believe your audience is there. See your audience, because you are sharing with an audience through the camera.
John, question on that. Are you using a camera, or what are you using to record with?
Using a camera.
Does it have a little, can you see yourself like a little video, or are you just
No,
talking into a camera?
no, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't.
So guys, I'm just going to demonstrate something really quick. Right now, I'm trying very hard to look into my camera lens, and it does give you the sense that I'm talking to you. Now, right now, I'm looking at myself because I'm using my webcam, or maybe I'm using my laptop and I'm talking at myself, which is something that we're all tempted to do, but it's a very different feeling than when I look at you. So just keep that in mind as you're giving your presentations.
And the final mistake that is so easy to make is thinking that I don't need to rehearse. We touched on this earlier, Jay, thinking I don't need to rehearse. And where does that thinking come from? Well, I'm a subject matter expert. I live and breathe my content. I really understand what I'm talking about. I don't need to rehearse it. Of course, content matters. Of course, what you say matters. But how you say it matters even more. How you say it physically, how you say it vocally, where you put the emphasis. And that needs you to have practiced. How long should you rehearse? Until you know you know. If you lose your PowerPoint slides, you know you know. This is not about whether you know your content. We know you know your content. This is about whether you know the exact content, the exact story that you're about to tell right now. And the more you know, the more secure you're feeling. If you walk in with doubts, those doubts will appear, those doubts will be seen, those doubts will be sensed and felt by your audience.
Phenomenal. Phenomenal. John, I know we said we were only going to do 25 minutes. I feel like we've gone way longer, and I'm super grateful that you took the time. This has been such a joy. If I had 10 minutes, John, I've only got 10 minutes because I'm the busiest guy at Domo. What do you think is the most important part of my presentation to focus on? And then any last thoughts?
For me, the most important part of the presentation to focus on is getting that structure right. It's that third mistake that so many of us make, Jay, thinking the audience will get what really matters. All too often, I do not hear the reason why I should listen.
Okay.
I hear a lot of presentations that finish with, well, hopefully I've been able to give you the 3 key takeaways in this presentation, which are 1, 2, and 3. Fine, but they should have been right up the front,
right
up the front. So think headline, think 3 key messages, think always story and the emotional journey of a story, and think the power of repetition to facilitate memory recall of the detail.
Phenomenal. Phenomenal. Man, I'm so excited. Okay, so guys, we're going to wrap it up and leave it at that. John is going to I've already sent out invitations, and if you haven't received an invite, let me know. We're going to do group sessions. We're going to do 2 group sessions at the end of March and at the start of April, where John's going to come back and work with us kind of in a group session, but hopefully have a little bit of one-on-one time for you to get some feedback. Again, thank you so much for joining us. And John, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Jay. My pleasure too. Thank you so much.
Catch you later. Thanks.
Bye-bye.